Okay, let's go. Number 1. The Gate of the Gods. The cliffs southwest of Puno rise from the Lake Titicaca Basin into the Pune Highlands at an elevation approaching 12,500 feet above sea level. The wind comes across the altiplano in long horizontal sheets. The granite here is pink and gray, mostly continuous, mostly solid. Near the summit of one particular escarpment, carved into the solid cliff face with precision that required sustained effort and deliberate design, there is a doorway. 2 vertical columns in relief, a horizontal lintel across the top, a carved threshold at the base. The outer frame stands 23 feet tall and 23 feet wide. The angles at each corner are 90 degrees. It does not open. The granite behind the carved frame is solid. At the center of the carved frame, inset into the cliff, is a smaller niche 6 feet tall, 2 feet wide, cut approximately 2 feet into the rock. A door within a door. A hole with precise dimensions and no apparent mechanism in the face of a cliff that provides no further explanation. Modern archaeological documentation of the site dates formally to the late 1990s. A Peruvian tour guide named José Luis Delgado Mamani reported finding the carved cliff face in 1996 and stated that the location had appeared to him in recurring dreams before he went looking for it. His personal account is part of the site's popular history. The older documented record is separate from it. Spanish colonial missionaries working in the Lake Titicaca region during the 16th century collected accounts from Aymara, informants the Fai indigenous people of the Altiplano, describing a doorway in the mountains that divine beings used to travel between this world and another. Juan de Betenzos, a Spanish soldier who later married into the Inca nobility and compiled one of the earliest detailed accounts of Andean civilization, recorded in 1551 Inca oral traditions, referring to a passage associated with the deity Viracocha, located near the shores of Lake Titicaca. These accounts were gathered independently by different Spanish observers over several decades from informants who had no known contact with each other. The Titicaca Basin is the origin point in multiple Andean cosmologies. The Tiwanaku civilization, which preceded the Inca and built the Gate of the Sun, the Acapana Pyramid, and a complex of monumental structures on the Bolivian shore of the lake, considered the lake the birthplace of humanity. The carved cliff at Hayu Marca is 45 miles northeast of Tiwanaku. Both sites are cut from granite formations of the same geological origin. The decorative elements of the cliff face have points of correspondence with Tiwanaku stonework. The proportioning of the carved niche, the integration of geometric precision with the natural face of the rock. The physical object that appears most often in the site's oral tradition is the punchao, the golden sun disk, the holiest object of the Inca state religion. A large disk of hammered gold depicting the sun deity, housed in the innermost shrine of the Coricancha temple in Cusco. When Francisco Pizarro captured the Inca emperor Atahualpa in 1533, the priests of the Coricancha removed the punchao from the temple before any Spanish hand reached it. Spanish colonial records confirm the disc was never recovered. Its last confirmed location was Cusco. After 1533, the record on its location is silence. Spanish colonial records confirm that Pizarro's forces collected substantial gold from tar in the months following Atahualpa's capture, approximately 13,000 pounds, by the official smelting records filed with the Royal Fifth in Seville. The punchao is not among the items those records describe. It was specifically identified in colonial documents as absent from everything the Spanish found. The priests removed it before the Spanish reached the temple. Where they carried it has not been established. Aymara oral tradition at the cliff site documented by Andean anthropologists in the 20th century, recurring in specific accounts though not universal across all versions, holds that a high priest named Amaru Maru carried the punchao from Cusco to the carved cliff, placed it within the central niche, and passed through the doorway with it. The niche is empty. Independent analysis of the carved geometry has noted that the inner niche and the outer frame share the same proportional ratio. Both are dimensioned in a relationship that would require deliberate calculation rather than freehand carving. Philip Coppens, a Belgian researcher who published extensively on ancient stone structures before his death in 2012, produced comparison studies linking the cliff's proportions to carved doorways at Tiwanaku and at the Gate of the Sun. The Peruvian Ministry of Culture's own site documentation records the 90-degree angles, the consistent relief depth, and the matching proportions of the nested frames as notable features of the carved surface. These are the ministry's observations, in the ministry's documentation, on a site the ministry controls. 3 Andean geologists conducted a surface survey of the escarpment in 2001 under contract to the Peruvian Geological Survey, assessing the stability of the cliff. Their report documented the granite formation and noted no visible anomalies suggesting a cavity behind the carved surface. They did not conduct subsurface analysis. Ground-penetrating radar of the cliff face itself would require Ministry of Culture authorization. That authorization has not been granted. No invasive structural investigation of any kind has been permitted at the site. The ministry's stated position is preservation-based. The granite surface of the carved area would be damaged by currently available investigation methodology. The site is accessible to tourists. You can reach the cliff face on foot. You can stand in front of the carved doorway, extend your arm, and touch the surface of the carved niche. What has not been done is the investigation that would determine whether the granite, directly behind the carved surface, is as solid as a surface-level geological assessment suggests, or whether anything lies behind it. The central niche has precise dimensions. The disk whose dimensions it may match disappeared from Cusco in 1533. The cliff has stood in the altitude and wind of the Titicaca highlands for longer than any record documents its origins. What is behind the carved stone has not been measured. The surface assessment assumed it. No one has confirmed it. Number 2. The Serapeum sealed end chamber. In 1851, a 29-year-old French scholar named Auguste Mariette was in Cairo on assignment from the Louvre to purchase Coptic manuscripts. He spent the purchase money on something else. He had been reading Strabo, a Greek geographer who died around 24 CE, who had written in his geography that near the pyramids of Memphis there was a Sphinx Avenue, mostly buried in sand, that led to a temple of Serapis. Mariette followed the Sphinxes. They were there, buried, exactly where Strabo had placed them 1800 years earlier. They led him to the Serapeum. The underground complex he found is a series of galleries carved into the bedrock below the desert plateau at Saqqara. Its function was the burial of the Apis bull's sacred animals associated with the god Ptah, considered a living manifestation of divine power while alive. Each bull was buried in an individual granite sarcophagus. Mariette found 24 of them. Each box is approximately 13 feet long, 7.5 feet wide, and 11 feet tall. Each one weighs between 60 and 80 tons. The passage through which visitors enter the Serapeum today is approximately 6.5 feet wide. The mathematics is straightforward. The boxes are inside the gallery. The gallery is too narrow for the boxes to have entered after the gallery was complete. This is not disputed. The boxes must have been placed before the gallery was sealed around them, or there was a larger entrance that is now closed. Neither explanation has been confirmed. The entrance used to bring the boxes in, if it exists, has not been found. The precision of the boxes is a separate problem. In 2010, American engineer Christopher Dunn measured the lid of one sarcophagus box 7 in Mariette's catalog using precision reference surfaces. The lid's surface was flat to within 2/10,000ths of an inch across its full length. That tolerance matches modern precision machining. The tools documented as existing in the relevant periods of Egyptian history have not been demonstrated to achieve this level of flatness at this scale. No official Egyptian antiquities study has attempted to replicate the surface using period-documented tools and publish the results. Dunn's measurement is in his published work. The measurement itself has not been disputed. Mariette spent years documenting the Serapeum. He found 2 gallery systems. What he termed the Older Gallery, which he attributed to the 19th dynasty, roughly 1300 BCE, and the more extensively documented 26th dynasty galleries, from approximately 600 BCE. His expedition journals, published in Paris in 857, contain a specific notation at the terminus of the Older Gallery section. At its far end, Mariette documented a stone door. He noted that his team could not open it. The journal entry does not specify the nature of the obstruction, whether the door was too heavy, whether it was sealed with some bonding material, or whether there was no accessible mechanism from the side his team approached from. He noted it, recorded it, and the entry ends there. No documented expedition has returned to that stone door since 1857. The Serapeum is open to visitors, but the accessible portion is limited to the main 26th dynasty gallery containing the large boxes. The older gallery section and its sealed terminus are not on the visitor path. The Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities has not authorized excavation or investigation of the terminus. No independent archaeologist has published a report examining the sealed door. No Egyptian state study of the terminus has been made publicly available. Jean-François Champollion, who deciphered the Rosetta Stone and is credited with the foundational breakthrough in reading Egyptian hieroglyphics, visited Saqqara in 1828. He found no entrance to the Serapeum. Mariette found it 23 years later by following Strabo's directions to the Sphinx Avenue that Champollion had not located. Strabo had been right. An ancient Greek geographer, dead for 18 centuries, provided accurate directions to a location that a modern scholar had walked past without finding. Strabo's geography, compiled between approximately 20 BCE and 23 CE, also noted that inner precincts of the Serapeum housed archives documents that the priests had not permitted him to examine directly. He acknowledged writing from the accounts of people who had been inside, but would not describe what they saw with specificity. In antiquity, Strabo was not always taken as a reliable authority. The sphinxes were exactly where he placed them. Strabo wrote about many things. He also mentioned that the Serapeum contained areas he had not personally entered. His account describes the complex's architecture with the tone of someone who was told rather than shown. Mariette found 24 sarcophagi, a gallery too narrow for the boxes it contains, a stone door at the far end of the older section that his team could not open, and a notation about that door in his 1857 published account. That notation, the door, the fact that it could not be opened, the absence of any follow-up, is the most recent primary source document on record about the terminus of the older gallery. The gallery the boxes are in is the gallery that should not be able to contain them. The older gallery ends at a door. The door is where Mariette stopped in 851. No one has picked up where he left off. The boxes are still inside the passage that should have been too narrow to receive them. The stone door at the terminus of the older gallery has not been opened. Number 3. The Hypogeum of Hal Safliani, 3rd level. In the autumn of 2902, construction workers breaking ground for new housing in the town of Paula, on the island of Malta, felt the floor give way beneath their tools. They had broken through into a chamber carved from solid Globigerina limestone, not a natural cavity, shaped by human hands during the Neolithic period, beginning sometime around 4000 BCE. It was not the only chamber. There were more below it and below those. The Hypogeum of Hal Safliani has 3 descending levels. The uppermost, from the surface to approximately 10 feet down, consists of natural limestone cavities modified and expanded. The second level, from 10 to 23 feet, is the most extensively carved and architecturally finished smoothed walls, ochre-painted surfaces, corbelled ceilings, decorated niches. These upper 2 levels are accessible to visitors on a restricted basis. A maximum of 80 people per day, booked months in advance, no flash photography, temperature and humidity controlled. They are visited. They are documented. They are known. The 3rd level, from 23 to 35 feet below the surface, is not on the visitor path. Across the complex, in the ossuary deposits concentrated in the upper levels, were the skeletal remains of approximately 7,000 individual human beings. The culture that built this place and used it for centuries was a specific Neolithic civilization that inhabited Malta from approximately 5900 BCE. Around 2500 BCE, the archaeological record from Malta shows a discontinuity. That culture disappears. The skeletal population type changes. A different people are present. The builders of the Hypogeum, the people who knew why it was built, the way it was built, were gone before the Bronze Age began. On the 2nd level is a room called the Oracle Chamber. It contains a carved niche in one wall at approximately standing height. If a male voice is directed into the niche at a frequency of approximately 110 Hz, the sound propagates through the limestone walls of the chamber and through the entire complex in a way that can be felt physically, not merely heard. Researchers from Princeton University, led by Dr. Robert John of the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Laboratory, measured the acoustic properties of the Oracle Chamber and published findings in the Journal of the Acoustical Society of America in the mid-1990s. Female voices tested in the chamber at comparable volume do not produce the same propagation effect. This is a property of the room's geometry, the shape of the carved space. Someone, approximately 5,000 years ago, working in limestone without metal tools, carved a room that behaves this way for male voices specifically. The people who designed that property are among the 7,000 whose remains were found in the ossuary above it. No document they left behind has been read. The third level is accessible by crawling through a low passage. Beyond the crawl entrance, carved stone doorways open onto passages that have not been fully documented. In several locations, the passages appear to continue into areas that have been mapped from above through ground-penetrating radar, but not entered. A UNESCO assessment published in 2014, addressing the hypogeum's conservation status, noted that unmapped sealed passages had been detected on the third level but had not been excavated due to preservation concerns specifically, the risk of disturbing the humidity and atmospheric conditions of the lower chambers. In 1935, approximately 30 school children and a teacher, guided by a Maltese university student, entered a passage on the third level and did not return. The third-level passages are real. Their existence is documented in the UNESCO 2014 assessment. The carved doorways that open onto those passages are real. Where they lead is not established by any published archaeological survey. The hypogeum became a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1980. Access has been restricted in stages over subsequent decades as evidence mounted that even minimal human presence breath moisture, body warmth, microorganisms carried on clothing altered the preserved interior atmosphere. The current limit of 80 visitors per day is monitored. It has not been raised. In 1980, when UNESCO classification began, that visitor limit was 300 per day. By 1990, it had been reduced to 150. By 2004, it had been cut to 80. Each reduction followed documented evidence of atmospheric deterioration. Elevated carbon dioxide levels, wall surface erosion, mineral deposits forming on the ochre-painted surfaces from accumulated exhaled moisture. The 2014 UNESCO assessment noted that deterioration was continuing despite the reduced access. The oracle chamber works. It was built to work that way. The people who built it have been gone for 4,500 years. The third level has carved doorways that open onto passages no one in the modern era has entered. The passages are in the dark, below the oracle chamber, below the ossuary of 7,000, below the limestone floor of Paula. The carved doorways are still there. What they lead to has not been determined. Number 4. The inner enclosure of Nan Madol. The lagoon off the eastern coast of Pohnpei Island, in what is now the Federated States of Micronesia, is crossed by a series of channels between artificial islands. The islands are constructed from columnar basalt, a specific volcanic rock that forms in natural hexagonal columns when lava cools slowly and evenly. The columns at Nan Madol are consistent in diameter and are stacked in alternating horizontal and vertical layers in a pattern similar to a log construction. Individual columns weigh between 5 and 50 tons. There are approximately 92 artificial islands in the complex, covering an area of several square miles of tidal flat and shallow lagoon. Pohnpei does not have columnar basalt in the quantities used at Nan Madol. The nearest known source of basalt matching the geological composition of the construction material is a site across the lagoon, approximately 3 miles away by open water. Some geological analysis has suggested the basalt may share characteristics with deposits on the island of Kosri, roughly 150 miles to the southeast. Moving individual columns, weighing up to 50 tons across open ocean, using materials and techniques attributable to the builders, has not been satisfactorily demonstrated. No experimental effort has completed the task. A 2007 study published in the Journal of Archaeological Science examined the mineral composition of 23 basalt samples from Nan Madol structures. The analysis confirmed that the majority matched petrology at the Socays area of Pohnpei, roughly 3 miles across open water. Several samples did not match those deposits. The study recommended additional sourcing analysis to identify the origin of the non-Socays material. That follow-up study has not been published. Carbon dating of organic material found beneath the basalt foundations has returned results ranging from approximately 200 BCE to 1200 CE to 1200 CEE, with the main construction phase conventionally placed between 1200 and 500 CEE. Some earlier dates have been attributed to contaminated samples or older organic material unconnected to the construction. The debate has not been resolved. The largest and most architecturally significant island in the complex is called Nandowas. Its outer walls are basalt columns stacked to a height of approximately 80 feet. Within those outer walls is a mortuary platform used by the rulers of the Sotalur dynasty, the polity that governed Pohnpei during the period most associated with Nan Madol's active use. At the interior of the mortuary platform is a sealed inner enclosure. The entrance is a narrow passage between two massive basalt walls. Beyond the passage is a stone-sealed structure, whose interior has not been accessed in the modern era. Between 1910 and 1912, researchers working under colonial administration in Micronesia conducted a survey of Nan Madol. Their work continued through subsequent Japanese colonial administration in the years after World War I. Partial records from this survey period survive in archives at the University of Tokyo. The partial documentation references the discovery of human remains and what are described as metallic objects in at least one sealed chamber within the Nandowas enclosure. The complete survey report has not been made publicly available. What was removed from the site, if anything was removed, has not been officially confirmed. Pohnpeian oral tradition, preserved and recorded by anthropologists across the 20th century, describes the Sotalur dynasty as possessing supernatural abilities that allowed them to move the basalt logs across water. The rulers performed rituals within the inner enclosures of Nandowas that gave them authority over the natural world and the people of Pohnpei. The dynasty ended when a figure named Isoklekel, said to have come from Khosrei, arrived with warriors and drove the Sotalurs out. According to the oral account, the last Sotalur ruler sealed the inner enclosures before fleeing. The tradition does not specify what was left inside. The site is accessible by boat from the main island of Pohnpei. Navigation through the channels requires local knowledge. Mangrove vegetation that has grown into many of the island's structures over centuries of abandonment makes surface access to many interiors extremely difficult. The Pohnpei state government restricts all archaeological excavation at Nan Madol. UNESCO added the site to the World Heritage List in 2016 and simultaneously designated it a site in danger, citing damage from mangrove root intrusion into the basalt structures. The 2016 listing noted the risk of structural collapse in several sealed structures if no intervention occurred. Authorization for excavation or physical intervention to assess that damage has not been granted. The most recent documented attempt to access the sealed structures at Nandao was occurred during a Pohnpeian state archaeological survey in the 1990s. The team documented the outer walls and the entrance passage to the inner enclosure. The inner enclosure was not entered. The survey report filed with the Pohnpei state government recommended further investigation. Further investigation has not been authorized. The partial Japanese survey records from 1910 and 1900 point, and 1000 known account of anyone accessing the sealed interior structures at the site. What those records fully describe the human remains, the metallic objects, whatever else the survey team found and noted, has not been disclosed. The complete report has not been released. The basalt walls of Nandowas are still standing. The mangroves continue to grow into them. The inner enclosure remains sealed behind the narrow passage between the walls. Number 5. Vault B, Padmanabhaswamy Temple. The door to Vault B inside the Padmanabhaswamy Temple in Tiruvananthapuram, Kerala, is iron. On its surface, 2 cobras are carved in relief raised heads, facing outward, in a posture that carries specific meaning within the iconography of Hindu sacred architecture. The door has no visible conventional locking mechanism. In 2011, a committee appointed by the Supreme Court of India to inventory the temple's vaults reported that they could not determine how Vault B was sealed or how it could be opened without risking structural damage to the door itself. The committee did not open it. The Padmanabhaswamy Temple is dedicated to the god Vishnu in the form of Padmanabha the deity, reclining on a serpent, from whose navel a lotus rises bearing the creator Brahma. The temple site has been referenced in texts of the Sangam period, roughly the 1st through 3rd centuries CE. The current stone structure was substantially rebuilt under the patronage of King Marthandavarma of Travancore in the 18th century. The temple's custodianship passed through the Travancore royal family across several generations. After Indian independence, a legal dispute over administrative control reached the Indian Supreme Court, which in 2011 ordered an inventory of the temple's 6 underground vaults, labeled A through F. What was found in the other vaults has been reported in official government documents, legal proceedings, and international press coverage. Vault A yielded gold statues, jeweled ceremonial objects, gold chains of extraordinary length, diamond-studded items, and thousands of individual gemstones. The court-appointed committee's assessment placed the combined value of the contents of all open vaults at a figure that made it the largest single cache of treasure ever inventoried in the modern era. Estimates ranged from $20 billion to over $1 trillion, depending on the methodology applied to individual objects. The Indian government confirmed the findings were authentic. The contents of the other vaults are now legally secured. Vault B was not opened. The belief surrounding Vault B is specific and on the record. Hindu tradition holds that the vault is sealed not by a mechanical lock, but by a Naga Bandham, a serpent charm, a sacred mantra chanted in a precise sequence by a priest with specific training in that ritual lineage. The belief, documented in accounts collected by the court committee, is that the vault can only be opened by a priest capable of performing the Garuda mantra, a chant associated with a specific and unbroken line of ritual knowledge. The committee found no living priest able to claim that knowledge with verifiable credentials. The tradition further holds that any attempt to force the vault open by mechanical means, cutting the iron, removing the hinges, would release the protection of the cobras and bring catastrophe to anyone who attempted it. This is not a marginal belief. It is the documented basis on which India's Supreme Court Committee, having inventoried every other vault, recommended that Vault B remain sealed. The carved cobras on the door are not decorative. In Hindu temple architecture, cobras in a raised, outward-facing posture at a threshold mark a space that is actively guarded. The same iconography appears at thresholds across South Asian sacred architecture, where something is understood to be present that should not be disturbed. The Padmanabhaswamy Temple's Vault B door is the only known entrance in the complex displaying this specific configuration. The Travancore royal family, whose ancestors commissioned the current structure and administered the temple across several generations, maintained that Vault B has not been opened within living memory. The last documented opening is attributed in temple tradition to Swami Vilwamangalathu, a saint from the 16th century CE, approximately 500 years before the 2011 inventory. What he is said to have seen inside, and what he did with that knowledge, is not recorded in any document the committee examined. The Kerala High Court had initially ordered Vault B open during the 2011 proceedings. The Supreme Court stayed that order. The Amicus Curiae Committee, in its final report, recommended the vault remain sealed, pending further study of how it was constructed and how its contents, if any, could be safely preserved. The further study referenced in that recommendation has not been published. No date has been set for it. The committee that found hundreds of billions of dollars in treasure in the adjacent vaults left Vault B sealed. They could not determine how it was sealed. They could not find a person qualified under the temple's own tradition to open it. The Supreme Court accepted their recommendation. The Kerala High Court order was overridden. What the vault contains has not been confirmed by any observer in recorded history. The adjacent vault produced the largest treasure discovery of the modern era. The door with the raised cobras opens if it opens only to a specific chant that no living person is known to possess. The cobras on the door face outward. Let me say one thing, and I won't bring it up again. All 50 places like this one are now one book, The Sealed Vault. Yours to keep, easy to gift, and the best way to support this channel. Links below. Let's get back to the video. Number 6. The Temple of the Inscriptions. In 1949, Alberto Ruz-Luilier was examining the floor of the upper temple at the summit of the Temple of the Inscriptions at Palenque, a pyramid. Rising 85 feet above the jungle floor in the Mexican state of Chiapas, when he noticed something specific about one of the floor slabs. The slab had 12 holes drilled into its surface in 2 parallel rows, each hole fitted with a removable stone plug. Ruz pulled the plugs and lifted the slab. Beneath it was a staircase descending into the pyramid's interior, packed from top to bottom with rubble. The rubble had been placed deliberately. It took 4 complete field seasons, 1949 through 1952, to clear the staircase. At the bottom, a sealed stone door. Behind the door, a stone-walled chamber. Inside the chamber, a massive sarcophagus covered by a single carved lid measuring approximately 12.5 feet long and 7 feet wide. Inside the sarcophagus, the remains of Kanish Janab Pakal Pakal the Great, who died in 683 CE at the approximate age of 80. The sarcophagus lid's carved surface has produced more interpretive argument than almost any other object in Mesoamerican archaeology. Regardless of that argument, the burial was real. The excavation was published by Ruz in the Annals del Museo Nacional de Mexico in 1953, and the structure surrounding it was more complex than the staircase alone had suggested. In his 1953 field report, Ruz noted sealed stone doorways in the walls of the burial chamber. He described their locations. He noted that several appeared to lead into additional passages behind the chamber walls. He did not open them. His stated reason was the priority of documenting the primary burial context, the sarcophagus, the skeletal remains, the associated objects before the sealed atmosphere was further disturbed. The doorways were documented. They were not opened. Within the burial chamber itself, 2 narrow hollow tubes were found running from the area of the sarcophagus lit upward through the chamber walls and along the staircase passage to the temple surface at the pyramid's summit. Each tube is a hollow square carved from stone, approximately 4 inches across, fitted section by section. These have been described in the archaeological literature as psychoducts channels connecting the interior of the burial with the exterior world. Whether they served a ritual purpose associated with the passage of the ruler's spirit, whether objects were passed through them, or whether their function is something not yet identified, no consensus exists in the published record. The tubes are real. Their purpose has not been established. Temple 13, directly adjacent to the Temple of the Inscriptions, was excavated by INAH beginning in 1994 and found to contain the burial of a woman identified as the Red Queen, a senior Palenque royal of the late Classic period. Her tomb was beneath a sealed stone floor reached by a descending staircase in an identical configuration to Ruz's 1949 discovery. That structural parallel had not been predicted from surface analysis. In 2016, Mexico's Instituto Nacional de Antropología y Historia INAH announced that ground-penetrating radar surveys had detected a water channel running beneath the pyramid. In 2019, INAH and researchers from the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico published findings, confirming the presence of a natural underground cenote directly below the Temple of the Inscriptions. The cenote sits at approximately 50 feet below the pyramid's base. The findings were published in Nature and covered by international scientific press. The pyramid was built directly above the cenote. The cenote was already there when construction began. The Maya civilization that built Palenque during the Classic period, roughly 250 to 900 CE, had a documented theological understanding of cenotes as entrances to Xibalba, the Maya underworld, a realm beneath the surface accessible through water. Major sacred structures throughout the Maya world were deliberately sited above or adjacent to natural sinkholes. The Dresden Codex, one of 4 surviving pre-Columbian Maya manuscripts, addresses the relationship between water, the underworld, and the passage of rulers into the afterlife. Palenque's most significant pyramid, containing the tomb of its most significant ruler, was built directly above what its builders understood to be an entrance to the realm of the dead. The sealed doorways Ruz noted in 1953 are in the burial chamber walls. The direction they lead is downward through the pyramid's interior toward the base. The cenote is at 50 feet below that base. A LIDAR survey of the Palenque archaeological zone conducted in 2022 identified previously unrecorded structural voids beneath and adjacent to the Temple of the Inscriptions. INAH's published statement on the survey results noted that sealed passages detected in the scan would require significant engineering intervention to access safely. No such intervention has been authorized. The water table within the hillside into which the pyramid's lower structure extends creates engineering obstacles for any investigation requiring descent below the current excavated depth. The Kal Maya people, whose communities have maintained continuous presence in the Palenque region through the colonial and modern periods, preserve oral accounts describing the pyramid as a structure connecting the surface world to what lies beneath it. These accounts predate the modern discovery of the cenote. They describe what is below the pyramid as something that should not be opened. Ruz opened the staircase and found the tomb. He documented the sealed doorways in the chamber walls and left them sealed. Ina, confirmed the cenote at 50 feet below the pyramid's base. The 2022 LIDAR found additional voids. In the 73 years since Ruz first noted the sealed doorways in the chamber walls, no one has opened them. The pyramid was built above the cenote because the builders understood what cenotes were. The sealed stone doorways in the burial chamber walls are where they were when Ruz noted their locations in 1953 above the water, above the cenote, in the dark at the base of the staircase that took 4 years of clearing to reach. They have not been opened. Number 7. The Iron Gates of Derbent. The narrowest point between the eastern edge of the Caucasus Mountains and the western shore of the Caspian Sea is approximately 2 miles. At that point, a descending slope on what is now Russia's southern frontier sits Derbent, one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities on Earth. Archaeological evidence of settlement here extends to the 8th century BCE. Through the 2-mile gap past every viable overland corridor between Central Asia and the European steppe along the Caspian coast for 5 millennia. Whoever controlled Derbent controlled the route. The historical record of those who held it spans the Medes, the Achaemenid Persians, the Parthians, the Sassanid Persians, the Arabs, the Mongols, the Safavids, and the Russians. Each held it for the same reason the one before had. The wall still standing at Derbent was built in its primary form by the Sassanid Persian Emperor Khosrow I in the 6th century CE. It runs from the Narankala fortress on the hillside above the city down through the city's center to the Caspian shoreline, a total of approximately 2 miles, with towers at regular intervals and a main gate passage through the center. The wall was not symbolic. It was a physical mechanism for closing the only viable pass between the mountains and the water. If the wall held, the route was closed. If it fell, the north was open. Documentation of a fortified gate at this location predates the Sassanid wall by centuries. Josephus Flavius, writing in the 1st century CEE, placed an iron gate in the Caucasus corridor in his account of the region's geography, a barrier containing peoples beyond the mountains. Ptolemy's 2nd century geography labeled the same location the Caspian Gates. The text known as the Alexander Romance, a composite account of Alexander the Great assembled from multiple sources beginning in 3rd century BCE, describes Alexander constructing massive iron gates in the Caucasus to seal in peoples identified as Gog and Magog, described as unclean nations to be contained until the end of time. This account survives in Greek, Syriac, Arabic, and Persian versions. All of them place the gate in the Caucasus corridor. All of them describe gates that cannot be opened. The Quran addresses the gate directly. Surah Al-Kahf, verses 94 through 97, describes a figure called Dhul Qarnayn, understood in much of Islamic scholarly tradition as Alexander who, at the request of a people, between 2 mountains, constructs an iron barrier to contain Gog and Magog. The verse specifies the outcome explicitly. When the promise of my Lord comes to pass, he will level it to the ground. The gate will be opened. The text does not say it has been opened. It names the time, the promise of God. That time has not arrived. The identification of Dhul Qarnayn has been debated across 14 centuries of Islamic scholarship, with candidates including Alexander the Great, Cyrus the Great, and an unnamed pre-Islamic monotheist king. That debate does not affect the Quran's account of the gate itself. The gate is not described as mythological. It is described as built, existing, and currently sealed to be opened at a specific time that the text does not name as past. In the 9th century CE, the Abbasid Caliph al-Wadhik organized a formal expedition to find the gate. He dispatched 50 men scholars, officers, and translators. They traveled for months. They reached the Caucasus corridor. They documented the external Sassanid wall at Derbent. They found no inner gate of the kind the Alexander accounts describe the sealed barrier beyond the exterior fortification, the specific gate that could not be opened. They returned to Baghdad. They had found the wall, not the gate. The Narankala fortress above the city contains a large underground structure beneath its main courtyard. It was identified for many years as a water cistern, a practical designation for a sealed underground space inside a military fortification. In 1971, archaeologists attempting to survey the underground structure found it accessible only through a passage partially submerged in standing water. The flooding prevented access to the chamber's interior. The chamber's actual function, cistern, vault, dungeon, or something outside those categories has not been determined. Its internal design does not conform to the standard architecture of Sassanid military cisterns documented at comparable sites elsewhere. No alternative identification has been established in the published literature. The chamber has been known since 1971. The water has been in the passage since 1971. Derbent was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2003. The designation requires approval from multiple oversight bodies before physical investigation can proceed. The underground structure beneath Naran Kala has not been excavated. The flooded passage has not been cleared. The sealed chamber interior has not been accessed. The 9th century Abbasid expedition, 50 specialists dispatched by a ruling caliph expressly to locate the gate, found the external wall, and returned without finding what they were sent for. The Alexandra accounts, the Josephus notation, the Quranic verse, and Ptolemy's geography all place a sealed barrier at this location, a specific gate, not the general fortification that is visible. The outer Sassanid wall is documented and standing. The inner gate, described in all 4 textual traditions, has not been located within the structures at Derbent or anywhere else in the Caucasus corridor. Every medieval account that places a gate here describes something that cannot be opened by ordinary means. The one organized attempt by a ruling authority to find it Al-Wadhik's 50-man expedition in the 9th century reached the wall and came back without the inner gate. The underground chamber beneath the fortress has been known since 1971. The flooded passage leading to its interior is still flooded. The chamber is sealed behind the water. What its interior contains has not been determined by any observer since the passage was found submerged and the survey team turned back. Number 8. The sealed chamber beneath the Great Sphinx. The Great Sphinx at Giza is carved from a single outcropping of limestone bedrock on the Giza Plateau. Its body extends approximately 240 feet from front paw to tail. It stands approximately 66 feet tall at the head. Conventionally, Egyptology attributes its construction to the reign of Pharaoh Khafre. Approximately 2530 BCE, a guardian cut from the living rock, facing east toward the rising sun. The Sphinx is the largest monolithic statue on Earth. Its surface has been studied, measured, and photographed for 2 centuries. Its subsurface has not been examined by any team that was subsequently permitted to publish independently verified results. The geologist Robert Schoch of Boston University presented findings to the Geological Society of America in 1991, arguing the pattern of weathering on the Sphinx's body was inconsistent with wind erosion, the mechanism expected from the conventional construction date. The erosion he documented matched patterns produced by sustained rainfall over centuries. That climate has not been present in Egypt since approximately 7000 BCE or earlier. If the erosion was caused by rainfall, the Sphinx predates the dynastic period of Egypt by several millennia. Schoch's analysis was published in peer-reviewed geological literature. It has not been refuted in peer-reviewed geological literature. It has been disputed by Egyptologists on the basis of the conventional chronological framework, not on the basis of the geological evidence itself. Between the Sphinx's paws is a granite stele placed by Pharaoh Thutmose IV, around 1401 BCE. The stele describes a dream in which the Sphinx spoke to Thutmose as a living deity, promising him the throne of Egypt in exchange for clearing the sand from its body. The stele refers to the Sphinx as already ancient, as something existing long before Thutmose's reign, which was more than 1,000 years after the conventional construction date. The text, documented in the Cairo Museum catalog, references the Sphinx's resting place in connection with a structure beneath the ground. The damaged lower sections of the stele contain partially reconstructed text. The legible portions have not been tested by physical investigation. A vertical shaft is documented in the Sphinx's back, a rectangular opening, noted by European archaeologists in the 19th century, descending into the bedrock. No comprehensive survey of its full depth and connections has been published. Its existence is in the official archaeological record. Its interior has not been systematically documented in the modern era. Between 1991 and 1998, multiple independent research teams conducted ground-penetrating radar surveys of the Sphinx enclosure under Egyptian Supreme Council of Antiquities permits. Results from multiple surveys indicated anomalies in the subsurface below and around the Sphinx signatures consistent with voids or cavities. In 1996, the Score Foundation conducted a permitted survey of the area between the Sphinx's paws. Egyptian authorities halted the survey before it was completed. The partial data collected has not been published in a peer-reviewed journal. The team was not permitted to return. Dr. Zahi Hawass, then Secretary General of the Supreme Council of Antiquities, stated publicly that the survey had found no hidden chambers. The Score Foundation's partial dataset was not made publicly available for independent verification of that statement. In 1998, a separate team requested authorization to conduct independent subsurface radar work in the same area. Authorization was denied. The American psychic Edgar Cayce gave documented sessions between 1901 and 1945 in which he described a chamber beneath the Sphinx's left paw, a hall of records containing the complete history of a civilization he identified as Atlantis, predating Egypt. He specified the chamber would be discovered and opened near the end of the 20th century. Cayce's followers, organized as the Association for Research and Enlightenment, provided funding for several of the 1990s survey expeditions, including the Score Foundation work. The connection is documented. Expeditions funded by a Cayce organization conducted legitimate surveys under official permits using scientific instrumentation, produced results consistent with subsurface anomalies, were halted before completion, and were denied follow-up access. What those partial surveys found, and what Egyptian authorities reviewed in the partial data, has not been made fully public. The Geological Evidence SCOC published the rainfall weathering on a structure supposedly built in a period with no sustained rainfall has not been resolved in the published literature. The stele between the Sphinx's paws describes the monument as ancient in 1401 BCE. The shaft in the Sphinx's back has not been fully documented. Every independent team that requested continued access after producing anomalous subsurface results was denied that access. No independent team has been permitted to complete a subsurface survey of the area beneath the Sphinx's paws and publish full results. The Sphinx faces east. It has faced east for at least 4,500 years by conventional dating, and possibly far longer. Whatever is beneath it, bedrock, void, cavity, or something else entirely, has been there for the same span of time. No independent observer has confirmed what lies below the left paw. Number 9. The inner passages of the Great Enclosure. The conical tower inside the Great Enclosure at Great Zimbabwe is 33 feet tall, 19 feet wide at its base, and solid. No entrance. No door, no hatch, no shaft, no passage of any kind into its interior. The tower is constructed from the same dry-fitted granite as the walls surrounding it, individual blocks sourced from the natural outcrops of the surrounding landscape, fitted without mortar in a tapering spiral pattern. It does not lean. It has stood for approximately 800 years. No inscription marks it. No comparable structure exists in any documented ancient context in sub-Saharan Africa. No primary historical source explains its purpose or its position inside the largest ancient stone enclosure on the continent. The Great Enclosure is the most prominent structure at Great Zimbabwe, a site covering approximately 200 acres in the Masvingo province of Zimbabwe. The outer wall of the enclosure is approximately 800 feet in circumference, 36 feet high at its tallest point, and 15 feet thick at its base. It was built from approximately 900,000 granite blocks without mortar, using the principle of precise fitting and gravity alone. The effort required was significant and sustained. The builders left no inscription identifying who they were, why the enclosure was built, or what the tower inside it was for. Within the enclosure, running between the outer wall and an inner dividing wall, is a passage called the Parallel Passage, 5 feet wide, 240 feet long, extending from the main entrance gate of the enclosure to the base of the conical tower. The passage is too narrow for two people to move comfortably side by side. It ends at the tower. Whether the passage is a processional route, a defensive measure, or a concealed access feature is not established in the published archaeological record. It is aligned with the tower. The tower has no inside. The city of Great Zimbabwe was the capital of the Munhumutapa state, a Shona-speaking kingdom that controlled the regional gold trade from approximately the 11th to the 15th century CEA. When European explorers arrived in the 19th century, the Shona people's claim to having built the site was systematically denied. Karl Mach, a German geologist who surveyed the ruins in 1871, concluded they had been built by Phoenicians or Arabs, not by Africans. Cecil Rhodes, who subsequently administered the surrounding region, funded excavations under the direction of Theodore Bent beginning in the 1890s. Bent's stated objective was to find evidence of non-African construction. His excavations removed artifacts from the site, including 8 carved soapstone birds unique to the location, gold objects, and imported trade goods to Cape Town and London. His methodology was not consistent with modern archaeological standards. The stratigraphic record disturbed by his work cannot be reconstructed. The 8 soapstone birds are called the Zimbabwe birds. Each one is unique. The birds were originally transported by Cecil Rhodes to his personal estate in Cape Town. After Rhodes's death in 1902, they passed through several institutional custodians before returning to Zimbabwe in stages. Provenance records for each figure's original excavation location, which platform, at what depth, in association with what other objects were incomplete in Ben's own published field notes. The stratigraphic data that would have established each figure's specific ritual context does not exist. Each depicts a bird with humanoid features at its feet. Zimbabwean oral tradition, documented by ethnographers across the 20th century, attributes specific significance to each figure. One now appears on the national flag of Zimbabwe and on its currency. After independence in 1980, 6 of the 8 birds held by colonial-era institutions were repatriated. The original placement of the birds within the great enclosure, specifically where each was positioned, and in what arrangement could not be fully reconstructed because Ben's excavation records were incomplete. In 1958, Rhodesian archaeologist Keith Robinson conducted a structured excavation of portions of the Great Enclosure under Rhodesian Archaeological Authority. Working in the area of the conical tower, Robinson's excavation reached a subsurface depth that revealed evidence of sealed stone passages, structural elements below the ground surface, not visible from above. His findings were documented in a report filed with the Rhodesian Ministry of Internal Affairs. That report has not been publicly released. Its existence is referenced in subsequent Zimbabwean archaeology literature. What Robinson found beneath the conical tower area, the nature of the sealed passages, their extent, what they contained is not in the public record. After Zimbabwe's independence in 1980, all archaeological authority at the site transferred to the National Museums and Monuments of Zimbabwe. No further excavation has been permitted in the conical tower area since that transition. No international archaeological expedition has been granted access to the subsurface beneath the tower. The 1958 Ministry report remains in government archives. Its contents have not been disclosed. Great Zimbabwe is not only an archaeological site. It is the foundational symbol of the nation, the source of its name, its flag, its currency, its claim to independent identity. The colonial insistence that the Shona could not have built it, embedded in Rhodesian school curricula until 980, was a tool of political dispossession. The assertion of Shona authorship is not merely an archaeological position. It is the basis of national legitimacy. Any excavation beneath the conical tower that produced findings at variance with either the nationalist narrative or the current archaeological consensus would require a public reckoning that extends well beyond archaeology. The weight of what the ground beneath the tower might contain has not diminished since 1980. The Robinson report filed in 1958 is in an archive. Its contents have not been disclosed. The conical tower is 33 feet of dry, fitted granite with no entrance and no interior that any modern observer has seen. The parallel passage runs 5 feet wide and 240 feet from the enclosure entrance to the base of that tower and ends. The sealed passages Robinson found are below the tower. What his report says about them is not public. The tower has stood for 800 years. It has no inside. Number 10. The double gate and triple gate. On the southern exterior wall of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, set into stonework built during the reign of Herod the Great from approximately 19 BCE to 6 CE and blocked at an undetermined point in the medieval period, are the sealed outlines of 2 ancient gates. They are visible from the street. The stone blocking them is a different type and a later age than the Herodian masonry surrounding them. The blocking was placed by a different hand, sometime after the original gates were active. Beyond the blocked arches, in the direction of the Temple Mount platform's interior, are the passages those gates once led to. No documented expedition in the modern era has entered them from the exterior. The gates are called the Hulda gates. The western pair is the double gate, 2 arched openings side by side. The eastern pair is the triple gate, 3 arched openings. In their active period, they led into underground passages beneath the Temple Mount Esplanade, the Hulda tunnels, which ran below the platform surface and emerged at the level of the temple courts above. The Mishnah, the codification of Jewish oral law, compiled approximately 200 CE from earlier traditions, addresses these passages directly in the tractate Midat. There were 2 Hulda gates in the south, which served for entry and exit. Josephus Flavius, writing in the 1st century CE, described the subterranean passages and their gates in Jewish antiquities and Jewish wars. The passages existed. Their function was documented. Then they were blocked. The Temple Mount platform is contested ground under 3 separate religious traditions. In Judaism, it is the site of the first and second temples, including the innermost sanctuary, the Holy of Holies, which the Torah identifies as the location of the Ark of the Covenant, the physical receptacle of the tablets given to Moses on Sinai. In Islam, it is the Haram al-Sharif, the noble sanctuary, housing the Dome of the Rock built over the foundation stone from which Islamic tradition holds the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven during the night journey, and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. 43 United Nations resolutions have addressed the site's status. Each one reflects the same intractable fact. This is the most contested piece of ground on earth, and the contested ground is on top of the passages. The Jordan Waqf, an Islamic religious trust, controls all activities on the Temple Mount platform. This arrangement has been in place since Jordanian administration of the Old City in the 1950s and was maintained after Israeli jurisdiction over the surrounding area was established in 1967. The Waqf has refused every request for archaeological survey, excavation, or independent access to the compound. Israeli courts have upheld the Waqf's administrative authority over the platform in multiple rulings. In 1981, Israeli archaeologist Meir Bendov, conducting approved excavation along the exterior of the southern wall, discovered a sealed tunnel appearing to extend beneath the Temple Mount Esplanade. He did not open it. The Waqf was notified. The Waqf blocked the tunnel with concrete. The concrete is still there. Bendov's work along the southern wall exterior had otherwise proceeded with appropriate authorization and was published in his 1982 book, In the Shadow of the Temple. The discovery of ancient Jerusalem. The 1981 tunnel discovery is documented in that volume. His account of the Waqf's response the instruction to cease work in that direction, and the subsequent concrete placement is specific, dated, and has not been contested in any published reply. In 1996, the Israeli government completed and opened a tourist tunnel running along the base of the western wall beneath the adjoining Muslim quarter. When an exit from this tunnel emerged near the Via Dolorosa, the Waqf contended that the work had been done without adequate coordination and represented unauthorized interference with the Temple Mount's structural vicinity. Riots followed. The documented death toll was approximately 80 people. The exit was subsequently closed. Ground-penetrating radar studies have been conducted from adjacent properties, the Western Wall Tunnel, the Western Wall Plaza, without Waqf authorization. Assessments compiled by archaeologist Amos Kloner and others, referenced in publications from 2014 and earlier, show anomalies consistent with large underground voids beneath the Temple Mount platform. No GPR survey has been conducted from within the compound. The Waqf has not authorized one. The theological record on what the Hulda tunnels may contain is specific and on the record. Maimonides' Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, the 12th century Jewish philosopher and legal scholar, wrote in his legal code Mishneh Torah, in the section called Laws of Temple Vessels, that King Solomon constructed a concealed underground crypt beneath the temple expressly to house the Ark of the Covenant in the event of conquest. Maimonides specifies that King Josiah, in 623 BCE, placed the Ark in that crypt before the Babylonian invasion. The Book of 2 Chronicles, chapter 35, verse 3, records Josiah instructing the Levites to return the Ark to the temple in that same year. After the Babylonian destruction of the temple in 586 BCE, no text locates the Ark anywhere. Its last confirmed location is Jerusalem, 586 BCE. Every account of it after that point is inference, tradition, or silence. The Hulda tunnels run through the southern portion of the Temple Mount in the direction of what Jewish tradition identifies as the location of the Holy of Holies. The blocked arches are visible in the southern wall from the street outside. The concrete bendov found and the wakf poured is in the ground. The GPR anomalies beneath the platform are in the assessment reports. Maimonides wrote his account of the concealed crypt in the 12th century. He died in 1204 CE, with the crypt's contents unconfirmed. Every gate on this list is sealed for a different documented reason. Geometric impossibility, engineering impossibility, preservation mandate, flooded passages, concealed foundations, colonial restriction, or the intersection of two governments and three world religions controlling the same stone. What they share is this. The thing beyond the gate has not been confirmed by any independent observer within living memory. Some of the gates are visible. Some can be touched. None have been passed. If that is the kind of question this channel should keep asking, subscribe. Leave a comment with where you are watching from. Like the video if you made it this far.